Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Susan Feneck. I am the CEO and founder of Juvenile Justice Impact. Today we have with us Lance Gondek, who has been a school counselor of 25 years in the Boca Raton school system. He is going to be talking with us and telling us about some of his observations that he's seen over the years, some of the conflicts, the resolutions, the problems, the solutions, and he's going to be sharing with us his experience in the education system. So, hey, Lance, how's it going?
Very good, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this today.
Thank you for making the time on a Saturday afternoon. So you have been a school counselor for 25 years. That's a long time, and that's a lot of experience. I'm sure you've seen a lot of trends, a lot of different. When
you say trends, probably the biggest thing is noticing how fragile the family fabric has been in regards to the adjustment to the pandemic or to the social pressures to be successful and to move forward. You were saying my observation of 25 years, which is interesting, is watching the development of public education in the state of Florida. As you mentioned, I was part of advocacy committees fighting for not just the children, but also the work environment as a whole, as a school community. And currently, in the state of Florida, there's been probably the most recent push over the last decade, where we used to be in the middle of the pack for funding and supporting public education. We are down to 47th in funding, and there is a large push by the legislation to privatize not just education, but to all facets of life. But since I work with families and with children, it's been very discouraging to see the shortfalls, or because the biggest word I always use with families and with kids to success, you want to distill optimism and hope. And those two things, to me, are probably the biggest things under attack right now, because without hope, we have despair.
How is optimism and hope how is that a factor?
Well, with the lack of funding and resources, the oldest expression would be you're supposed to pull up your bootstraps. But schools over time, I use an example of being in Boca Raton for 25 years. When we opened up our school, the fabric of our 1,500 student body was on 7% free and reduced lunch. 7% means the schools are providing more so than just education. But over the last 20 years, we are now over 50%, where schools are tasked not just with education and curriculum or instruction, where also the students placed to eat breakfast, to eat lunch, to receive medical attention. And with all these added stressors of the school's responsibility, the funding is going in the opposite direction. So when a child comes to our building with hope and aspirations to have, I wouldn't say no fear, but have the ability to inspire to do well, to want to learn and feel safe, those are becoming more and more cumbersome simply because you don't have the resources available. And then what's ending happening up now, I believe, in the school community. It's not just the parents, the children, or the staff. We're in a crisis now because of the work environment, where we have a major shortfall with even personnel. So the actual fabric of the actual community is teetering. And when you hear Boca Raton, everybody says affluent areas, country clubs, everything manicured all the way down to the flower beds or even the street corners. But at what expense? The community on paper looks good, but the actual social fabric between families and the children dealing with I call the instability, that's what I mean by hope and optimism being under attack.
And why do you feel as though this is it acceptable?
It's not acceptable. Actually, since I was just attending a state convention, and it's a political world. We see it through the pandemic, how they handle the masks. Even masks are going out. the schools are becoming a political forum. And the union, and I don't mind saying it, the union, I give a lot of credit to when they did the convention and pursuit of voting on potential pursuit of what they want to lobby for in regards to the legislature. They're going on a bipartisan approach to keep politics away from public schools and to look at it from a community standpoint, regardless of Democrat or Republican or Christian or Muslim. They're going back to the basis of teaching our youth to be productive, well-rounded, respectful citizens. And over the last decade, I've seen a deterioration of that because of the political agenda. And the most recent is they want the school board members to now declare if they're Republican or Democrat. That's what I mean by the social fabric is becoming very in jeopardy. And the state has passed, and this is important in middle school, is because they have mandated that civics is a mandated middle school curriculum that they need to pass a state exam before they're promoted to high school. And so I call the political agenda that the staff's supposed to be neutral on. The students are bringing it upon because of social media. So I'm hoping, and I said even from my standpoint as a counselor, I'm hoping we go back to the basics. We always talk about basics as reading, writing, and mathematics. But it goes more so than a community feel that you care about each other, or the kindergarten rule, treat others how you wish them to be treated. But right now it's a very fragile time as we come out of the pandemic because child development and student development are about 18 months delayed at the moment. And the powers to be haven't quite recognized that. And all they want to do is hit a switch. And as you know, with children, it's not just a switch. And there's no determination if it's going to take a month or it's going to take a few months or a year. I know they're resilient and they're going to rebound. But right now we have to be very careful what direction we go. And in Florida right now, and it's not me saying this, it's just the propaganda saying that attack on public education. But when you rank 47th or 48th out of funding and you're siphoning money out of the public sector to the private sector, and it's blatant, then you start worrying about the school as a fabric of a community. And even, like you said, even Boca Raton is not protected from that demise, I should say.
How do you feel like, have you ever sat down with the parents themselves, and have they ever had any concerns with any of these concerns that you're speaking of right now?
Yes. We're very, very fortunate in the Boca Raton area or Palm Beach County. 3 years ago, the state tax towards schools is voted on every 4 years, and the community recognized what's happening at the state level, and they passed a referendum. And the senior teachers, because the cost of living here is very high, the community cared so much that they passed a referendum that they gave teacher bonuses to offset that their salaries are not meeting the cost of living. And that referendum is expiring a year from now. But if it wasn't for the community support, and I mean the families that we work hard for every day, regardless of what you do for the school district, for the cafeteria staff, the custodian staff, the bus drivers, school counselors, the teachers, without the care of the community locally, it would be even more of a concern. But in a year from now, as the political pressures have risen and that referendum is coming up, and they're already shorthanded 3,000 teachers, I'm hoping the community still has the goodwill to recognize that school community is important as any piece of the community. And ultimately, who's affected by it is the children that you work with on a daily basis.
So you're telling me that you're short 3,000 teachers. Is it because there's just not the resources of having the qualified people to come into the schools?
Yeah. To become a teacher is very, to be a certified, I'm going to say this nicely, certified teacher. Because in a private school or a charter school, you don't have to be certified. When you work in a public sector, you're held to a higher standard of credentials and licensing. However, the universities, the enrollment for educators is decreasing because they're realizing the people that are pursuing these degrees, once they go into the work environment, they're not receiving a livable wage. So what the state did, and you can see it, you can look at the news and look it up, they're doing it for police, fire, as well as teachers. This state is spending a lot of money and energy in marketing and recruitment. But so the starting salaries and benefits and all that, starting up is very fair nationally. But what they have done, they have crushed it on the back end and putting no effort in retention. Mm. And it was happening is, so students that are going into education from the universities, this is not me speaking. I was at my state conference for Florida school counselors, and part of my degree program is in career counseling. And you look at trends, like you said, trends and statistics. Why would you go to school for 6 years to ultimately go into a wage, and you want to be a family member or provide, that you cannot provide for your own family? And your salary's been compressed, and there's no raises.
Can you give us an example of what the salary would be?
Starting salary is $48,500. I've been a school counselor for 25 years. They salary compresses with those salary scales. I am making $2,300 more than a first-year teacher, and I've been doing it for over 25 years.
That truly is unbelievable, because if you look at the educators in the country, around the world, any educator is there for a purpose. They're there because they love children. They're there because they love to see the growth in youth. They love to see, the kids grow physically, mentally, emotionally, scholastically. And if they don't have the drive, like you said, the incentive to make that low of a, as you said, non-livable wage, where's the incentive for them to give incentive to the youth? Because if you go into a position and you're barely making a wage to survive, your morale is really probably not going to be that high, which would have...
Not so much morale. What's happening is you have multiple teachers leaving school, and they love what they do, but for them to maintain working in this profession, they have to take on another, not part-time, another 30 to 40-hour job per week.
Right, and then they go into the position at the school, probably tired. I'm thinking if they're working all of those hours to make up for the compensation of what their wage would be, right?
Well, what's even more disheartening as a school counselor, I don't mind saying it, school counselor, the teacher's own family, their own kids, are suffering because of it as well. So when you take that in light, that is why there's a shortage. Not one issue, because there's multiple facets of why there's a shortage, or the enrollment in the universities are very low. Because people have realized, and it's not about being lucrative and rich. I've never used that terminology. There's givers and takers in the world, and I happen to be a giver by nature. Basic every exam or personality trait. I was a Marine for 8 years. I gave to the country. Got hurt in a war. Every test I took, you need to stay in a working, helping profession. Medically, well, I didn't want to see that type of. I didn't want to see, after coming back, I wasn't inclined to do that type of work. However, working with children and families, still being in a helping profession. I chose this profession. And what's discouraging, I see colleagues leaving in handfuls. Not because they dislike children, not because they don't dislike working in a school, is because they have their own family responsibilities and they had to make a tough choice. So as those kids grow up and seeing their parents working 2 and 3 jobs to provide, why would they go to school to pursue the same hardship?
Exactly.
Because you work hard, so that's what. So it's reciprocal. And this happened at the turn of the century, in the late 60s. And this country realized it did not want to. They came to scientists and teachers, all back during Sputnik, way back. People don't remember history, in the late 60s, on the race to the moon. And things do repeat themselves if you don't follow trends in history. We're going back toward that direction, that our best minds are not educators anymore. Not to say there's not great minds in education. I'm talking about a percentage of the need that's out there. I hear my administrators. I'm qualified to be a principal as well. So I sit in the leadership meetings. And the administrators say, we cannot find good candidates. They're not out there. Or they're not even available. You can't even find someone to fill a position. And as I end my career, I only have 4.5 years left. It's disheartening to see, because ultimately, as you said, the children are suffering from it. And it's not because of burnout. It's not because they don't want to, the teachers don't want to be there. They're being put into tough situations where they have to choose their family and their responsibilities because of the other variances.
I mean, sure. I mean, these people, I'm sure they love education, they love kids, they love the whole process of seeing them grow, especially educationally, and they're put in a bind because they wouldn't be able to support their families, and they don't want, so if they go into a position that they even love, and then they realize they have to work 2 other jobs, then they're not even going to be spending time with their families. And
that survey after survey after survey is showing this. And that's what they were discussing at my conventions, is being aware of burnout. Okay? I'm fortunate in some regards, as a disabled American veteran, I have a little bit of monthly income that subsidized my salary. If I did not have an additional income coming in, and I do coach, I couldn't do this anymore. And that's disheartening because I love what I do. You even through this conversation or any of my colleagues or my peers, you've never, ever heard me say, I dislike being a school counselor, or I do not like counseling and working with children. I have never said that. If I ever get to that point, ever, then that'd be the time that rightfully so I should walk away. But I am nowhere near that point yet. That's when I said I was in advocacy committees at the state, county, and even in my building in the South area. I have been fighting for educators as a positive, professional career choice and working with children. And like I said, I chose this, and I could have gone engineering, and I had other opportunities, and I was in working with engineers in the military with aviation.
With your incredible background, I mean, you're just like you said. I mean, you could have gone into anything. I mean, how was it that you chose to go into being a school counselor? And it's just so commendable, and I'm just so proud of you. I mean, you stuck with it. You found ways to stay with a position that you're passionate about, while at the same time, I know you've been coaching for a long time and subsidizing your income. And how was it that you chose to go into a field like this?
Because every personality test I ever took, she said I need to. When I started teaching in Japan when I was a Marine, I used to work with children. I enjoyed it, and I'm not being conceited about it. I was good at it, so I showed a lot of success with it. So when I took all those personality tests, they kept saying you need to be in a profession that you help others. That was a recommendation. No one tells you what to do. That was recommended for me to do that. And when you say you tip your hat that I'm still in it, people are shocked that I still do it. Because down here, when you tell you're an educator, it sounds terrible. The community feels sorry for you.
That's terrible.
It is terrible.
It should be just the opposite. They will commend you for what you're doing and the effect that you're having on all these youth and their families.
And this is why I said I'm very fortunate. 3 years ago, the community stepped up and gave us a referendum bonus because they recognize without teachers, well, I hate to say it, the marketing. If schools fall apart here, their housing values fall. And I'm not saying that was the only reason, but it hit them where it would hurt. The marketing. This was not coming from me. The marketing was you do not want your house value falling, and it worked to a degree. It's not the only reason why. I'm not saying that was the only reason, but the people that were on the fence about giving teachers raising the taxes for school tax, you had to make, since they don't have children in the system. They had to say something that was relevant to them. But next year, and I'm glad you brought me on, what I'm worried about, like you said, about hope. And I met somebody who's retired. I had breakfast with him this morning, of somebody of 30 years in education. He could have been a cop. He could have been a scientist. He was a musician. Phenomenal science teacher. And he knows next year, if state of Florida, I always believe in checks and balances no matter what you do. And right now, the state is run by 3 houses that are red. And if in next year's election, if all 3 houses stay red and we lose a referendum, there will be a major shortage of teachers in 2024.
How do they compensate for that? I mean, well, you have 3,000 teachers that they need. There's 3,000 positions right now that need to be filled. You're telling us that next year there could be an even bigger shortage. How do they compensate for it? I mean, who's the kids show up at school and then what? I mean, with this massive shortage.
I don't know what's going to end up happening. Is I believe the movement of privatizing and private schools and charter schools. I don't want to speculate negatively because, like you said, a school council is pessimistic. Okay, that doesn't go over really well either. But at the same time, I'm aware that I do educate families to be aware. Please vote next year. Be aware of how your vote affects your child's schools in the community. I'm not telling you who to vote for. Like today, I didn't tell you who to vote for. I would never do that because to me, would be inappropriate. But I do believe the community needs to be educated or have all the information available to them so they can make a sound decision of what direction. Because this state, wants to privatize everything. They believe it. And good, better, and different. However, I chose to work in the public sector. And the last few years have been very difficult. But the reward of helping a child
is immeasurable.
And I'm not just talking about them learning their math or their reading. The pandemic, you saw a heavy rise and I'm not trying to be sad, you saw a heavy rise of mental illness, heavy rise of suicide attempts. I've had to send multiple kids for evaluations at the pediatric hospital up in West Palm Beach to assess that their plan to harm themselves, they're not going to follow through with it. I'm hoping, like you said, I think we all hope that we go back to some kind of norm. But I'm glad you brought me on today. I'm worried our norm right now for public education is in jeopardy. And it's not just about the profession. It's about the children that it's affecting, because the public sector still has the majority of your population of children. not the private, which I'm not against, or charter. Because I think private should be a privilege, not a right. And as you take resources away from the public to fund private, ultimately you're creating a disparity or an inequity. And I know all the work you've done to bring notice to the juvenile justice, as you say, the tobacco. What happens there happens in the public sector because it's how the funding is shifted or who's benefiting from the shift. And ours is on the legislation side, and that goes for your domain of expertise. And then, like you said, when you introduced me, these are my observations. Some of them I know are true. But at the same time, I'm worried about where the community is going and how we're supporting the children, because we always say we will someday be dependent on them to take care of us. And as many people say right now, at least in my area, I don't know if they're going to be able to or willing to. So I like to end on that saying, I will not stop work with character ed. I will not stop promoting right from wrong and making good decisions based on all the information, staying objective and being non-objective if they believe in something slightly different. But ultimately with the same goal, that you respect others as you wish to respect you, and that you work within a system that perpetuates that if you work hard, you can get ahead. But once you work hard and you feel like you can't get ahead, that creates despair. I don't care what age you are.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. So I'm sure you've seen a lot of your colleagues, like you said, that have left due to not being able to pay for their own obligations with their family. When you've provide
for their family, and coming in jeopardy, and they had to leave because they could no longer be away from their family 18 hours a day.
And what do you do? What do you do personally to keep your mind healthy, your physically, mentally, emotionally, with all of these challenges that you're faced with on a daily basis? It sounds.
You stay active in your professional organizations, and you find out you're not the only one that thinks that. When you think outside the box, you come up with solutions on a daily basis, what you're trying to do with, or what means you have available to you to help. Personally, you keep, well, I don't mind saying it, you keep your family, your friends, and your spiritual growth or spiritual belief, which may be, and I always say that I don't get hung up on the names, and I don't mind saying spiritual training is God, Yahweh, or Allah. And I have a bulletin board that says December is a month of giving, and I have multiple symbols on there. Like last month, the month of Thanksgiving, or being thankful. Pick a symbol. I don't get hung up on the symbol, more so what's the important part of it.
The meaning behind it.
But the big thing is we talk about the basics. You keep your strength up by eating correctly, making sure you get your rest. When you have the need to talk to somebody, you definitely need to talk to somebody. You can't keep everything within. So when you find out that you don't have all the answers, or if you don't have all the resources, you find out where you can reach out for assistance, or where you can lean to help others as well as yourself. But the biggest thing is being aware of it and knowing you can't do it all.
I couldn't agree more. And that's a wonderful approach, because, I mean, you're setting an example for your colleagues, for your friends, your family, and all of those qualities that you just mentioned have an effect on your overall life and your lifestyle and the people that you're surrounded by.
Yeah. And I appreciate you taking the time to listen to a school counselor who has been around the world. He's very fortunate, because I've seen some things I'm glad that I was able to survive. They make me a stronger, better person today. And at the end of the day, if I know I made someone's life a little bit better or manageable, then I know I did my part.
And you've been doing your part for 25 years, and you've been positively impacting these families, these youth, your community. You have the strength and endurance that not many people have, and I'm extremely proud of you for staying with your passion and finding ways to continue on your path of education, and especially with all the challenges. I know we've spoken a lot about this offline over the years as well. With us both having an educational background and the challenges and how we've overcome the obstacles. And there's always a way, if there's something that you want to do and you know that it's going to be positive and have a positive impact on the youth that you're serving and their families and the community, you find a way, just like you've been doing over the 25 years. And I hope that our guests have learned a little bit about education and different avenues that they could take and how to overcome different challenges. If you would like to send an email to me, I could be reached at juvenilejusticeimpact@gmail.com, or you can check out our website at www.impactjji.com. Lance, Mr. Gondek, you really are a bright light in so many lives, and they're lucky to have you. They're lucky that you've been able to stay around for so long. I'm so proud of you, and I'm sure that the families that you have served and have been working with over all these years are always going to remember you, and you're leaving just such an incredible legacy. And I'm just so proud to know you and have you a part of all of our lives.
I thank you very much, and the accolades go back towards yours because our paths have crossed over the years. But I know all your endeavors and hard work to educate the masses about many positives, but also shortfalls to make, as we say, to make our country even stronger or better. So thank you as well.
Every little bit matters. It sure does. And what you're doing is incredible. And thank you for being a guest. And we'll tune in to you. I'm sure we'll follow up as the months go on, just to see how some of these changes are taking place and the implications of them all. Thank you, Lance. We appreciate you, and have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and we'll be in touch.
Yep. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good day. Bye now.